So I'm going to start today with a story about a time when I embarrassed myself. About 20 years ago, I used to do a thing with my family and friends. We'd go to a lot of black powder shoots, black powder rendezvous, where we'd show up at, generally for a weekend for us, somewhere in the mountains or on someone's property, and we'd sleep in tents and dress up in older type clothing. You can see here, this is me and my wife and my daughter Jessica, who's 19 now. So you can see this was a while ago. These were a lot of fun. My uncle got us introduced to it. My dad still really likes to go to them. Got a lot of friends that do. What those weekends consisted of was, showing up on Friday, and we'd have a lot of competitions throughout the weekend. A lot of it related to black powder rifle shooting, shooting different targets and keeping score. Black powder pistols. We also had knives and tomahawks that we'd throw and stick into blocks. And it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed doing it with my friends. And then we came to one rendezvous, and like I said, it was about 20 years ago almost, out in Marion, Montana. And it's west of Kalispell where I grew up, so I knew quite a few people that were there. And we showed up, and we're going through and having a great time that weekend. In the evenings, a lot of times there's a campfire, people with guitars, playing songs, singing, reciting poetry. It's just a great time. But they had a new contest, and this was cooking a pancake. And so the idea was we all, anybody that wanted to participate, pick a partner, pick a teammate. And the goal was to use a flint and steel to start a fire, and then, mix up some pancake batter and make a pancake. Seems pretty simple, right, as far as the pancake part of it goes. That was my job. A friend of mine asked me to do it. And so he was going to start the fire, and then we were going to make a pancake. So I was all ready to go. They said go, and I had a cup with a little bit of pancake mix, and I had a cup full of water. And in my nervousness and my excitement or whatever it was, I dumped the whole cup of water into the little bit of pancake mix. So I had some kind of like slightly thick water, right? And he was getting the fire going, and I was panicking because I was trying to figure out how can I unseparate these two. I don't think you can. And we ended up losing, and I was embarrassed. I was really embarrassed. I couldn't believe that I'd messed up mixing the pancake batter. Just a little bit of water would have been good. And I don't remember how it exactly played out, but at that point someone said, hey, I think the losing team should do all the dishes. And I was embarrassed, and all I wanted to do was get out of there. And so I don't remember if I responded or if I just left, but either way, I took off. And as I was walking away, I was thinking, I like to help out. Normally, like just helping out with the dishes, I just do it anyways. But my embarrassment led me to I got to get out of there. And the really unfortunate thing that happened after that is anytime we had an opportunity to go to a rendezvous after that, that was the thought that came up in my head. My embarrassment around leaving the dishes. And so, there's usually several of them throughout the summer, and I would come up with lots of reasons why, it couldn't go. But I really think that was a big part of it. A big part of it is I let my embarrassment and my shame and my thoughts around that keep me away from doing stuff with my friends and family. I have lots of stories like that. Lots of stories where I've messed up and take those thoughts and replay the events over and over in my head, create stories around them, and it's kept me from doing things. But not always. Not always do those thoughts keep me from doing things. Lately I've been working on paying attention to that, paying attention to what I'm thinking about the last few years. And recently I've started thinking I want to get back into shape. If my dad's watching, which I think he is, he's probably laughing about that because I've talked about that a lot. Actually this morning he texted me and said he was getting his snacks ready to watch for church this morning, so that's pretty good. But I've started really paying attention. What are the thoughts that I'm allowing into my head? What are the influences that are coming in? I've started watching, some different videos, people that, maybe have been through similar things, had some injuries that kept them from doing things. They got through it. My daughter is back home now, and she's been wanting to get up in the morning and do yoga, which is really good. She's really good at yoga. I'm not. But she encourages me to get up and do it anyways. So that's an area, that we're paying attention to my thoughts and recognizing that my thoughts and my stories that I had around injuries and age and schedules and all of that maybe weren't serving me well, and finding new ways to find some new thoughts around that has been helpful. So I'm going to ask you, what are your thoughts? When you wake up in the morning, what's the first thing you're thinking about? When you're driving to work, what thoughts are you having about the day, about upcoming meetings, about relationships? When you're at work and you have time in between, other obligations or driving home, when you're having dinner with your family, what are you thinking about? And I'd also like to ask, how would you categorize those thoughts? I think one category that might fit in there is like empowering thoughts that we have that are, give us courage, help us to make good decisions, bring peace into our lives. There's those kinds of thoughts. That if you're like me, not all the thoughts are that way, right? Maybe you have thoughts that are more limiting. Maybe there's things that you believe about yourself or about other people or about relationships that hold you back. Maybe you make up stories. Maybe you have interpretations. Have you ever been driving down the road and saw a driver that you didn't agree with how they were doing things and made up a whole story about what type of person they are? Yeah, I've done that a few times. Or maybe at the grocery store, walking through one of the aisles and see someone and read things into their face and create a whole story about why they don't like me. I've done that quite a bit too. Or maybe your thoughts are around assumptions, that just because something happened before, it's going to always keep happening with that. Maybe you started a business, tried starting a business, and it didn't really work out. And so now the thought is, well, I'm not an entrepreneur. I'm going to fail if I try and start a business. Or maybe with relationships that, I've tried relationships. They haven't worked out. They're not going to work out in the future. There's lots of opportunities for those assumptions to get in the way. Or maybe your thoughts are around that inner voice, the inner voice that says, I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not talented enough. For whatever, I am not enough. That voice it seems to largely be based on fear, of being afraid of things. Maybe that's where your thoughts are. Or there's another possibility too, and that's that you don't know what your thoughts are. A lot of us in this society live in such busy lifestyles that we don't take any time to be alone with our thoughts, to pay attention to what thoughts do I have? How is it impacting me? We're going from one thing to the next, always having a device in our hands, always having music playing. I know, that there's just lots of distractions in the world. So maybe it's that, not having an opportunity for listening to your thoughts. Okay, so Adam challenged me not to use notes, but I got to use a note here. Sorry. So I'd like to ask you, how well are your thoughts serving you? Are the thoughts you have and the actions that it's leading to, are you good with it? Is it how you want it to be? Is it how you believe it should be? A lot of my thoughts around church have changed dramatically in the last couple of years. I used to have some thoughts, different churches I've been to. I felt like so much of it was just about check boxes. I went to church, check the box. I went to church this week or this month or this year even. There's been times when it's been very sporadic. Or maybe it's around things like some of the traditions and liturgies that churches have, like, oh, we all said the Lord's Prayer together. Check that box. We did it this week, so we're done. I've had views around things like the creeds, like the Apostles' Creed, the Nicene Creed, where I didn't really understand, why are we doing this? We do this every week. We did it last week, we're going to do it next week. We can just kind of figure this out, checking the box again. I had views around things like Advent. Growing up, I knew about lighting the candles for Advent, but to me it still was for a lot of my life, was a check the box kind of thing. We're coming up to Lent here pretty soon. That was another one. I had a view of Lent that it was for people who wanted to give up something just so they could tell me they were giving it up. Kind of like a CrossFit thing or something like that. That was the purpose of it. But I think I was missing out. I think I was missing out on a lot there. I think that it's possible that these traditions and these, the liturgies that we have, maybe they're not an end in themselves. The goal isn't to check the box and say, hey, we read the Lord's Prayer together. Or maybe it's not, we did this thing this week. I checked the box that I did it. but maybe it's more kind of like a means to an end. A lot of you know that I coach youth baseball. I've been doing that for several years and really enjoy it. And I see that happening with the kids. We're coming into our winter workouts right now where we're spending time indoors, and we try to get creative on drills that we can do. Some of the drills we are hitting one-handed off a tee or soft toss, either the top hand or the bottom hand. We have some weird shaped bats we use. Sometimes we work on fielding without a glove, just barehanding and working on things. Sometimes we put out cones and do some footwork drills. And sometimes we'll be doing a drill and a kid will ask, like, why are we doing this? What does this have to do with baseball? And I think that relates to how a lot of these traditions is, those aren't just an end to themselves. We're not practicing so that if we forget our glove at home, we can still play. We forgot our glove, but we're ready for this. No, all of these drills and exercises that we're doing are to hopefully make us a better baseball player. So what if these traditions and liturgies are really more of like an on-ramp, a means to an end? Like, we can use these to learn how to be a better follower of Jesus. Maybe to help us with what's in our minds, and maybe to help us with what's also in our hearts. So how do we know? What can we do as far as how do we know? Like, what are our thoughts, and how is that impacting us? I think that there's lots of ways, but the first two that came to mind is to look at the thoughts themselves. Look at the thoughts and the influences for the thoughts. In Philippians 4:8, it says, finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. So how can we use that as a guide? Like, what are my thoughts? Do they fall under the true, the noble, the right, excellent, praiseworthy? Or are they something else? And what about the influences? The things that we're allowing into our lives. How do they fall into that? And I think the next logical way to look at it is, well, we can look at what's coming in, but we can also look at like what's coming about from it. And in Galatians, that's where we learn about the fruits of the Spirit. And Galatians 5:23, it says, "But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, forbearance, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control." So what if we look at those first three fruits, the love, joy, and peace, as kind of what our thoughts are, what our heart is? I think those three relate specifically, maybe more so than the others, around what's going on inside of us. And so looking at how our life is, do we have love, joy, and peace in our life? Or do we have anger and maybe even hatred? Do we have misery? Do we have discontent? Do we have anxiety coming up? What are the fruits that are showing up in our lives, in our relationships, in our jobs, just in our lives altogether? I'm going to go to my notes one more time. I want to make sure I'm not forgetting anything. So as we look at what do we do with these thoughts, a lot of you know that I have a little bit of a background in mindset coaching and helping people with their mindset around things. And with that, I have a lot of tools that I like to use and work with myself and with other people. And with your permission, I'd like to introduce you to one of them. I've seen it documented several ways. When I was talking to Hannah about it, she'd seen it in a different format. But the easiest way for me to remember it is the point FAR model. And go ahead and bring that one up. And really what this is saying is that our programming, our beliefs, who we are, the programming leads to our thoughts. A friend of mine tells me that in AA they have a saying that goes something like, you're not responsible for your first thought, but you are responsible for your second thoughts and third thoughts and the actions that you take after that. And that makes a lot of sense to me, and I think it's reflected in this model that who we are currently, when something happens, we have a thought. And it's up to us to notice, is that thought what we want, or is it something that isn't helpful? Because that thought that we have is going to lead to our emotions, the feelings that we have. You may have also heard that logic makes you think, emotions make you act, right? So the emotions that we have lead into the actions that we take. When a situation happens, we have a thought, causes a feeling or an emotion inside of us, we take an action. And then that action leads to a result. And that result is either going to change our programming, change how we view the world, or it's going to reinforce it. And for a lot of us, we've had a lot of the same thing going over and over. I spent a lot of my life not paying attention to my thoughts. And so that reinforcement got pretty darn strong. Situations would happen, and I would respond the same way. Looking back at my pancake story, how different would it have been had I noticed, wait a minute, every time I think about a rendezvous, my first thought is how I left the group and didn't do the dishes and just walked away from everybody. What if I would have had a different thought that came up there about, yep, I really messed up there, but that's okay. Nobody really cares. We're going to go and have fun this weekend. What if I had some other thought? How many more weekends would have I enjoyed with my friends, my family? How many more opportunities would my kids have had to go and do these things, do these events, to meet new people, to get some different influences? I mean, it could have worked out pretty well, right? So, sorry. This is what happens when I rush things and try to do it without any notes. I forget where I'm going. So I think I want to propose that maybe paying attention to your thoughts would be helpful. Pay attention to the thoughts that you're having and if they're the ones that you want to have. I also have heard of a saying that says to be a participant and an observer in your life at the same time. I spent a lot of my life just being a participant, going through and whatever happened is what happened. It is what it is, kind of a thing. But stepping back and reflecting upon how I responded to situations or how I acted or what has been helpful to me. So one final story that I want to hear is, if you've been around Narrate for a while, you know that this last year has been different. At least for me, I think it has for most people. And I honestly don't know how I would have viewed it 5 years ago, these differences. We've been going through Matthew, starting at Matthew 1, and we're up to 14 now, chapter 14, just going through it chapter by chapter, verse by verse each week. 5 years ago, I don't know how I would have responded to that. I don't know if I would have said, oh man, this is boring. Why, the Bible's so big. Why aren't we somewhere else? Why aren't we doing something different? But I can honestly say that I'm really grateful that we are going through it this way. I heard one time that it can be helpful to read the Gospels like they're a biography of Jesus' life, right? A lot of us have read biographies of people, maybe Steve Jobs or Warren Buffett or Oprah. Someone reading their biography to learn, how did they live? What did they do? How did they get where they are right now? How did they get to become the people that they are? And in some cases, it's to see, what can I do to become more like them? Or maybe to become not like them. What do I need to watch out for? And I think that going through Matthew this way has been such a wonderful gift to look at, how did Jesus live? How did he treat people? We're not skipping over anything. I love that Adam has been sticking with that all the way through. What were his hobbies? What were his habits? Even to some extent, what did he think about? And how much of a priority did he put into paying attention to his thoughts? So I want to encourage you. I think we have some really great stuff coming up here at Narrate in the next few weeks and this summer. And my hope and prayer for myself and for all of you and all of you watching at home is that we take time to listen. We take time to pay attention, to be alone with our thoughts. And maybe, the thoughts that we have, around some of this, that we're open to Jesus and what maybe some of these traditions, some of these liturgies, how they can be an on-ramp to becoming a better follower of Jesus. So I'd like to ask the band to come back up, and then I'm going to pray, and then we will take communion after that, and the ushers can get ready for that as well. Heavenly Father, I want to thank you for this morning and all the people that are here to worship with us and people watching online. And I just want to ask that you make your presence known, your spirit known to all of us, and as it relates to our thoughts and to our hearts and to our minds, as to focus on what you want us to focus on. I just thank you for all the blessings that you've given us and the opportunities that we have to worship together as a church, as a community, and really as a family. And I thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thanks for listening. If you'd like to learn more about Narrate Church, find us online at narratechurch.org or look us up on Facebook or Instagram.